You've probably already done this. You open up ChatGPT, you paste in your last few practice test scores, and you type in the question you actually care about. You say to ChatGPT, be honest, am I ready? And it'll say something like, you're really trending in the right direction. Your fundamentals look strong, and with a little more practice, you'll be in great shape. You've got this. And that might feel good, but it's also a lie. I mean, ChatGPT has no idea whether you're actually ready, but it tells you that you are. And that is the most dangerous lie in your whole LSAT prep journey because it's what you wanted to hear in a calm, confident voice for free at 2 in the morning from a tool that you've quietly started to trust. Now, some of you are already pushing back on this, and that's good because you're studying for an LSAT that lives and dies on precision, so we got to be precise here. You're thinking, it's not really lying because ChatGPT doesn't know that the answer is false. And that's fair, because a liar actually knows the truth and hides it from you. ChatGPT is worse though because it doesn't really know whether you're ready and it doesn't care. It just says whatever keeps you happy. But whether you take the LSAT, when you take it, where you go to law school, that's going to cost you 3 years of your life and 200 grand. At least the liar knows what the truth is. Now, OpenAI actually pulled a version of ChatGPT last year for being too agreeable. The word they used was disingenuous. Now, I've taught the LSAT since 2005, took it myself, went from a 152 to a 175, taught over 10,000 students over the years. And what I know for sure is that you don't blow the LSAT on test day, you blow it in the weeks leading up to test day, the moment you let a comfortable story about how ready you are go unchallenged. Now, that has always been the trap. Now, a study came out this year. Researchers ran the top AI models through more than 1,000 real LSAT questions. One of them got a perfect 180, did not miss a single question. 5 of the 6 best models scored above 97%. For context, back in early 2023, the best AI could barely scrape a 149 LSAT score that's below average. 2 years later, a perfect score on the test the legal world's used for 75 years to find its sharpest people. So the thing lying to you about whether you're ready is itself better at the LSAT than almost every human who's ever going to take it. It could probably teach the LSAT, but that's what makes it dangerous. If it were obviously stupid, you would ignore it. But instead, it's actually brilliant and confident, but it'll look you dead in the eye and tell you that you're ready when it has no clue. So the real question was never, is ChatGPT good at the LSAT? It obviously is. What it's telling you about your shot at law school is a different question, of course. And this is not just limited to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever you like to use. They all learn the same way. They're all trained on whatever makes you hit the like button. ChatGPT is just the most popular one. Now, the LSAT is not just a test. I want to be straightforward about that. It determines the rest of your legal career because your LSAT score decides which law schools say yes to you, which ones say yes, at what scholarship, decides how much debt you're taking on, and the debt against the job you can actually get after decides whether the whole thing was a good move or a mistake. Now, I'm not anti-law school, far from it. It's a real profession that has real careers, and plenty of people I've worked with are thrilled they went to law school. But there is a gap between a good outcome and a brutal one. And that gap is enormous. And the lever that moves you across it is mostly this one test. The same person putting in the same hours could get either a 165 or a 158, depending on how they study. But that 7-point gap could be the difference between a scholarship and getting a full ride, between going to a school where most graduates have a real shot at getting a great job versus where a lot of them are scrambling. All in, when you consider living costs and interest, law school runs more than 200 grand at a lot of places, and a few points on the LSAT changes what that number even is. And it matters more than it has in years. Applications are way up, the pool is tougher, and more schools than ever are posting median LSAT scores of 170 or higher. And so when ChatGPT tells you that you're ready, it's a statement about your score. And your score is your shot at law school. When it lies to you about whether you're ready, it's lying about which law schools are going to take you, how much you're going to pay, and what your life will look like on the other side. And so if the cost of fooling yourself is you take another practice test, that's fine. But when the cost is borrowing $200,000 for a school you only got into because a chatbot talked you into believing you were better than you were, that's a whole different thing. You don't get a retake on that. So getting an honest read on whether you're actually ready for the LSAT, where you actually stand, that is the most valuable thing in your prep. And that's the thing that ChatGPT is worst at giving you. Now, most people studying right now don't get how AI actually works. Official LSAT questions are copyrighted. The Law School Admission Council, the people who own the test license, that content out to prep companies, but no general chatbot has the real question back. And copy pasting copyrighted questions into AI to get them explained is a great area itself. And so when you go to ChatGPT for LSAT help, it's doing one of two things. It's either making up LSAT style questions, fake imitations, or it's breaking down a real question that you fed it yourself. Now, imitation questions are not the test. They might look close, but the LSAT is brutally precise about how its traps get built, and a knockoff drills you on a slightly different game than the one you're actually going to sit. And the explanations are also questionable. They're only as good as the read on why you got it wrong. Now, a generic walkthrough of why choice C might be correct is worth something, but it's not what you really need. The thing you actually need is someone who can see the pattern across all of your misses and tell you the truth about it. Because here's what I keep coming back to. The reason you want a tutor is not the explanation. You can find explanations anywhere. They're available online for free. Many of them are on my YouTube channel, by the way. What you need from a tutor is the judgment. Someone who tells you that you keep doing this exact thing and you don't even see it. And that's where ChatGPT falls apart. Because it's not stupid, of course. It can score a 180. It falls apart because of what it's built to do the second you ask it about you. It lies. And everyone's worried about it hallucinating and botching the logic, and it does that sometime, but that's not the dangerous thing. The dangerous thing is when it agrees with you because it wants to please you. Let's say you miss a question on something you already feel good about, and your brain reaches for a reason that isn't, I personally have a gap here, I have a foundational misunderstanding. You'll say to yourself, I was tired, I rushed it, I knew it, really I just slipped. It's a bad question. And all of that might be true. But ChatGPT will take that excuse and agree with it every single time. In contrast, a coach does the opposite. The coach's whole job in that moment is to refuse to let you have the excuse. ChatGPT can't do that. Because remember how OpenAI pulled a version for being too agreeable? That's what it does. The model gets rewarded based on you giving it a thumbs up. And so people like to give thumbs up to answers that flatter them and make them feel good. So it learns to agree. ChatGPT is a yes man. And so when OpenAI tried to kill that overly agreeable version for good, people were so hooked on being flattered that they made OpenAI bring it back. They protested. It feels amazing because it tells you that you're doing great. That's what it's trained to do, but it has no idea whether that's true. I've seen students do this for 20 years. It's not an LSAT thing. It's a human thing. Same deal goes for those tutoring the SAT or the MCAT. They'll confirm this for you as well. People make the most excuses for the misses that scare them the most, the ones that are material they thought they nailed. And so the folks going for the 170s, they've got the real ability to feel confident, which means they've got the most room to talk themselves out of their actual weak spots. And now AI is the tool that will help them do it every single time. So here's the thing I get from the students all the time. They'll say to me, yeah, I dropped a couple of logical reasoning questions, but I'm strong in reading comp, so that won't really hurt my score, right? ChatGPT will say, makes sense, of course, you're in good shape. But there are two problems with that idea. I dropped a couple of logical reasoning questions, but I'm strong in reading comp. What's the problem with that idea? The math is backwards, first of all, because logical reasoning is 2/3 of the LSAT. Reading comp's only 1/3. And so if you're strong in reading comp, good for you, but you're only strong on 1/3 of the test. The other 2/3 are going to tank you. The other issue is that if you're strong in reading comp, are you actually strong in reading comp? Are you consistently getting perfect sections, or are you getting perfect passages sometimes and tanking others? Because that's still an inconsistency. So there's a student making a reasoning error about their performance, and AI is nodding along saying you're totally right, you've got this, when that's not the case. And so AI cannot challenge you. It's not built to do that. It might do it sometimes, of course, but it's unreliable, it's inconsistent. It truly doesn't know what it's talking about. It's just pattern matching. It's not actually reasoning. In contrast, coaching helps you see your blind spots because you can't see them yourself. When you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. But once we add some real support into the mix, there's usually a pretty quick score boost, meaning there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit. And so if you're looking for help from a real human, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring to everybody watching this now or later. You can grab that free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. It's a free download PDF. You can grab it at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link for that also is below the video on YouTube, in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. Open offer to anyone watching this. You can grab it now or later. Happy to take any and all questions, anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can. Anything at all, LSAT, law school admissions. Just scanning through here for what I may have missed. I see Chelsea's asking, I got a 147 on a timed diagnostic, but I have ADHD and will apply for time and a half. Should I retake the diagnostic with time and a half? Yeah, I would. I mean, we want you to establish an accurate baseline based on where you're actually scoring under test day conditions. And if your test day conditions are going to be time and a half, then take your practice tests under that scenario. And in the past, I would have said, don't assume you'll get time and a half, but LSAC has gone from approving 46% of accommodation requests back in 2012 to now approving 98% of accommodation requests, basically meaning that if you get your documentation in on time before the deadline and have a note from a qualified professional like a primary care physician or a psychiatrist, you'll probably get what you ask for. If you have ADHD and you can provide the documentation, you're probably good. So I would assume that you will, as long as you're getting there by the deadline. Mrs. Robinson asks, my practice test score went down. Is that normal? I mean, scores fluctuate. I've never met a student whose scores didn't fluctuate. And so it's normal for them to go up, normal for them to go down. I would never want you to over-index on any one particular LSAT practice test result. What I'd want you to do is take the average of your most recent 5, and that'll give you the best indication of where you actually stand. So don't stress if it went down. Could have been a bad day, could have been a one-off. Take a larger set of practice tests, and then we'll have a more accurate read on where you're at today. Sauce God's asking, taking the LSAT today at 5:30. I've got time and a half, 53 minutes per section. Scored a 165 in February, looking to crack 170 plus. Good luck. Hope you rock it. Try to relax the next couple hours if you can. Take a hot shower, take a hot bath, go get a massage, go for a walk. Don't stress, don't study. Just get all your things together so that you're good to go for the start time. And for peace of mind, might not be a bad idea to sign up for the August LSAT just in case, worst case scenario, you got to retake in August. You're good. You could still apply when applications open. So I wouldn't overly stress on this one exam, but I hope that you hit that 170 plus. Tria Dangle's asking, I'm a rising 2L with a bad GPA. I never took the LSAT, took the GRE instead. Should I try to transfer with an LSAT? Maybe. Wouldn't hurt to put the application out there and see what happens. And you're applying for a transfer doesn't mean that you actually have to do it even if you get in. But very few students get into law school with a GRE, and if you apply with only a GRE, you may be underselling yourself, because the LSAT is the best way to get the best outcomes, because law schools will reward you with a high LSAT score, with more scholarship money, for example. They're also more likely to take you with an LSAT score because that helps them raise their standings in the U.S. News rankings, provided that your LSAT's above their medians. It also shows that you've got what it takes to succeed in law school. And so if you applied without an LSAT score before, you apply with one now, you might have better outcomes. Wouldn't hurt to take the LSAT and see what happens. I see Mrs. Robinson's asking, I'm taking the August LSAT. What would you suggest as a study schedule to maximize these 2 months? Okay, so let's say you've got roughly 9 weeks till your August LSAT. We can divide LSAT prep into 3 major phases: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Accuracy is building a strong foundation, drilling questions by type. Pacing is doing individual timed sections to work on your time allocation, how you divide your time over the course of the section. And endurance is full-length exams. And so you could, broadly speaking, devote your prep into 3 separate phases of 3 weeks each. 3 weeks for the foundational phase, 3 weeks for the pacing phase, and 3 weeks for endurance. Of course, I wouldn't wait to the last 3 weeks to take full-length practice tests, but I would at least focus on them in those final 3 weeks and sprinkle some in earlier as well. If you want to talk through what a personalized study plan could look like, that's exactly what we help our students do at LSAT Unplugged. We look at where you're currently scoring, what your goal score is, what your time frame is. In other words, how long do you have before your LSAT? How much time can you put in per day and per week? And then we craft for you a personalized study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now until your test. If you want to talk through what that study plan could look like, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube. pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. And you can also, of course, grab the free LSAT cheat sheet as well. Yeah, awesome. Glad it's helpful. Just scanning through for other questions here. Kay Thomas is asking, what's a good GPA for getting into law school? Good is relative. Good depends. Good depends on what law schools you're targeting and what their GPA medians are. You should know for reference that there is a lot of grade inflation out there, and so GPA medians are higher than you might think. For the top 14 law schools, for example, GPA medians range from 392 to 399. And so if you want to get into a top 14 law school, you want to be in that 3.9 range. If you're below a 392, then you'd want to be above their LSAT medians. Now, their LSAT medians run from 170 to 174 or so. And so if you're below a 392, you want to be above a 175 to compensate. And because rate inflation is so high, even law schools outside the T14 still have super high medians of 3.8 to 3.9 on the GPA side. So look up the law schools that you're targeting. Look up their GPA medians and their LSAT medians. You can find these by looking at their ABA 509 reports. You just Google X Law School 509, and you'll get a sense of what numbers you need to be competitive at a given school. I see Chelsea's asking, do you think a 157 or 160 diagnostic is realistic, or to go up to a 172 in 3 to 4 months? So to go from a 157 to a 160 plus in 3 to 4 months, is that realistic? Yeah, it could be, certainly. I mean, the question becomes, what can you put into your prep over the next 3 to 4 months? And how have you studied so far? A cold diagnostic doesn't tell you anything, really just tells you that you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course, you can over time. And so the question becomes, what resources have you been using and what resources can you use going forward? Have you just been self-studying with LSAT for Dummies and practice questions, or if you've taken a course, have you gotten coaching? The more support you can get, the more you're going to improve your score. And so the question becomes, can you put in 10, 15, 20 hours a week, or only 5, 10 hours a week? The more time that you can put in and the more support you can get, the bigger an improvement you're going to get. Ultimately, your improvement comes down to the amount that you study for the LSAT and the way in which you study for the LSAT. And so getting some support can only help. Think through what your study plan could look like, outline it at the very least along that framework I mentioned: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Make sure that you're not neglecting review, of course. Review is key to get down to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong. At LSAT Unplugged, we use a framework called the Socratic Review Method. It's a cornerstone of my courses and coaching programs. The idea being, of course, that we're not going to be there on test day, and we can't take it for you. So we've got to give you the confidence, the clarity, and the skill to perform when it truly matters. And so we ask you a series of guiding questions live in the coaching, and you can also adopt that same process for your own self-studying. For example, was it your approach to the question that was off, or was it the text of the question that threw you off? Was it a tempting wrong answer choice or an unappealing right answer choice? Because if we can get down to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, then we can help you avoid making that same mistake again. And so take a real good, hard, critical look at what your review process looks like. Don't just look at the answer key and say, oh, I get it now. How could I have been so dumb? Because then you'll just make the same mistake again. We've got to go 3 levels deeper at least to look at what are the patterns in the tricks and traps that you personally are falling for, so that we can help you avoid making the same mistake again. So that's what we focus on in the coaching, not explaining questions the way that a book would or the way that a video would, but really talking through it in the dialogue. And if you want some help talking through that process, you can book the free tutoring with me if you haven't already. I see Timothy's asking, what advice would you give to someone who is practice tests are at the 175 range and want to get those last 5 points? Awesome. Kudos to you for gunning for that top score. I would focus on the hardest questions. The logical reasoning questions, for example, are presented in a general order of difficulty, meaning they get tougher as the section goes on. And so I want you focusing on only the hardest questions on the test. So to save you some time, you could, as an exercise, just do the back half of any given logical reasoning section. That's where the harder questions are going to be. Don't do them timed, of course. You can't time anything outside of a full section. But as a drill, you could just do only the back half, the second half, the harder half of any given logical reasoning section, and that will allow you to focus on the hardest logical reasoning questions. That's where you really need to improve, of course. because you're not getting questions wrong because of the question type. It's not like you don't know how to approach a strengthen or weaken or flaw question, for example. You're just getting hard questions wrong because they're hard, and that could come down to the method of reasoning and the argument, or the tricks and traps and the choices. And of course, in-depth review using that Socratic review method framework I was talking about. Just scanning through for other questions here. Chelsea's asking, is it true that working full-time while attending school full-time is the same as KJD? No, so a KJD is an acronym. It's a slang, online slang referring to someone who goes directly from kindergarten all the way through to law school getting their JD without working in between school along the way. So you're going straight from undergrad to law school without skipping to work in between. Now, working full time while attending law school full time is actually prohibited by many law schools. In other words, law schools typically will not allow you to work while you're in law school full time. Reason being that law school is hard enough by itself. You're not going to have time to have a full time job and go to law school at the same time. If you're spinning too many plates, some of them will inevitably drop and break. In other words, you would tank your GPA in law school or suffer at work, and they don't want you to do that. Now, if you need to work while you're in law school, the appropriate course of action would be to do a part-time law school program, like an evening JD, where you're working during the day and working on the side, but not working full-time while in law school full-time. It's too much to do. It's just too much. Now, working full-time while you're an undergrad, yeah, that's certainly impressive. And so I would at least write an addendum explaining that you were working full-time while you were an undergrad, and that way it gives some useful context for why your GPA wasn't relatively higher than it would have otherwise been. So I would certainly include that. Nathan's asking, what's harder, 1L, 2L, or 3L? So the first year of law school, the second year of law school, or the third year of law school? I think by virtually all accounts, the first year of law school is considered harder because you're getting your bearings, and it's a rough adjustment in many cases to learn how to study in law school, because law school is not like undergrad. The volume of work and the nature of the work is fundamentally different. And so it takes some getting used to the format in which they're teaching and what they expect you to do. And so for that reason, again, it's important not to work while you're in law school, especially during 1L year, because it's such an adjustment. We actually don't let 1Ls coach the LSAT for us. We don't hire 1Ls in their first semester because it's too much to balance working while starting law school. Once you're in 2L or 3L, you can kind of get the hang of things, and then it's easier. But that 1L is a rough adjustment for many folks, and it's not a bad idea to do some prep prior to starting law school to get your bearings. See a question regarding international students and GPAs. Yeah, so if you're applying to law school from outside the US, law schools do not consider your undergraduate GPA because they don't really know how to interpret it, unfortunately, which is kind of crazy to me, but they don't get any data on that beyond whether it's above average, average, or below average. And so they're not calculating your GPA in their admissions formulas, the so-called index, where they weigh your LSAT score relative to your GPA. And so for that reason, your LSAT score becomes that much more important because there is no GPA for them to use in their formulas. And so that could be good news because it means that you have a lot more room to improve your odds of admission with that higher LSAT score, but you also can't coast on the LSAT. You got to take it seriously. See, Shirai is asking about deferring admission. Yeah, you can apply for a deferral if you get into law school and you want to delay it a year. You can request a deferral, and typically they'll grant it. If you start deferring 2, 3, 4 years in a row, though, they start to wonder, like, is this person ever going to actually go? And there might be a limit on how much you can do that, of course. And that would apply whether you're going for a JD or a JD MBA or anything else. But I think that the value of an MBA has diminished over time. So I would think good and hard about whether you actually need the JD MBA or whether the JD alone is going to be sufficient. See a question from I Need Jesus asking, I'm an upcoming senior in high school, advice to prepare me for college, law school, etc. Well, first things first, you've got many years ahead of you. Focus on college. Focus on getting into college. Focus on succeeding in college, maintaining a good GPA in college. Choose your major carefully. Law school and the LSAT are not going anywhere. Your LSAT score is good for 5 years, not good for time beyond that, though, so I wouldn't take the LSAT yet. I would just focus on getting into a good college with good scholarship money, ideally, and then choosing a good course of study. But maintaining a good GPA and choosing a good major will set you up for success no matter what you end up wanting to do down the line. See a question from Ali asking, any thoughts on American University and Chicago Kent law schools? I haven't looked into those two law schools in particular depth recently, so I'm not going to speak off the cuff about them. When you want to look up any given law school, I always point you towards the American Bar Association 509 reports and the employment outcomes reports as well. That will give you a good sense of the median LSAT and GPA for getting into the law school. It'll also give you a sense of the bar passage rates and the employment outcomes for the school in terms of specifically how many of their graduates pass the bar on the first try, how many pass the bar within 2 years. And then for employment outcomes, you want to look at how many of their graduates are employed full-time with a job requiring a JD in a long-time position within 9 months of graduation, I think, or 10 months of graduation, I believe, is the cutoff. And so you want to look at those numbers specifically. When you're looking at bar passage rates, you want to look at the bar passage rate relative to the average state bar passage rate, because bar passage rates vary based on the state. Some states have harder bars than others, and so bar passage rates will vary. For example, California has a pretty brutal bar passage rate compared to some other states because their bar exam's harder. So keep that in mind when you're looking. I see Sarxian's asking, is this a playback video? No, this is real. I'm answering questions live for real. Rose is asking, is it true that wherever you go to law school, that's where you should get a job? Like if I go to Cardozo, but I'm from Florida, I couldn't get a job in Florida after I'm done at Cardozo. Okay, so I'll say this. I mean, a law school typically has its strongest reputation in its area unless it is a top-ranked law school. So some law schools like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, for example, I mean, they have national and international reputations, meaning that even if you apply to law school to a job outside of the state where that law school is located, people will probably respect the degree. If you go to a regional law school, like a lower ranked school, then people may not be familiar with the school and won't carry the same prestige. So, for example, I know Cardozo because I'm from New York, but someone in Florida may not be familiar with the name Cardozo and may not know about its reputation. And so it might be harder to get a job at a lower ranked law school outside the area where it's located. I mean, you could go to law school in New York and still get a good job in New Jersey or Connecticut or Pennsylvania because those are states surrounding New York, so they're regional, but across the country might not have the same reputation necessarily. So consider where you ultimately want to practice and maybe think about, hey, if I want to go to a lower ranked law school with more scholarship money, maybe I only want to do that if I'm going to practice law in that state or close to that state. See a question about the LNAT for British universities. I'm not familiar with that, unfortunately. I would ask someone in the UK. See, Luke is asking about in-person tutoring paired well with an online prep course. In-person tutoring's really diminished significantly over the past 6 years or so, ever since the pandemic. Things have really moved online, and I think just honestly more convenient. I mean, you get access to the best tutors regardless of location. And so you don't have any commute issues. You always have your materials with you. And so I think the in-person market for courses and tutoring is really tanked and everything has just moved online. And I do miss meeting folks in person, but honestly, online is just so much easier for everybody that I don't really have a whole lot of regrets about it. If you want to talk through what your tutoring program could look like, I'm happy to discuss it with you. You can book a free tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link's below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That's an open offer for everybody watching this now or later, by the way. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your prep. You can grab that cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet, which is also below the video and in my bio as well. I see Lal's asking, how much do soft factors such as sports, clubs, internships, projects weigh in admissions? The truth is not very much. They're called soft for a reason. It really is your LSAT score, then your GPA, then everything else being a distant third. Just because of the American Bar Association and the US News rankings, the numbers are really the focus. Connor's asking, when applying for a job after law school, do you need to submit your LSAT score or just your grades? Used to be just your law school grades, but surprisingly, in recent years, some employers have been asking about LSAT scores as well. I'm not really sure why, but a lot of them are regardless. And so make of that what you will. I see it's me, Alvin, he's asking about a master's degree GPA. No, master's degree GPA is not factored into the admissions index. Only your undergraduate GPA is considered because that's what the ABA asks for, and that's what the US News factors in as well. And I know some folks can get in with other exams now. There are some law schools that are LSAT optional in name where they look at other exams like GRE, JD Next, but very, very, very few people get in with those exams. And like I'm talking like a fraction of a percent. And the problem is that when you apply with some exam other than the LSAT or without an exam score at all, you're really sacrificing your scholarship negotiation leverage. And you're not getting into the best law schools possible, unfortunately, because when you apply with an LSAT score above the median of the law school that you're targeting, then you give them more reason to take you because you're raising their standing in the rankings, and you're also giving them reason to give you more scholarship money as well, because you will help them raise their standing in the rankings. When you apply without an LSAT score, then you're not helping them in the US News rankings, and so they have no reason to give that to you. And folks, the chat's moving pretty fast here. I'm trying to get to as many questions as I can. If you have questions that I didn't get to, feel free to keep dropping them in. I'll do them to the extent that I'm able. I'm also not answering these questions just chronologically. I'm answering the ones that I have not answered earlier in this same live or this week. For example, I'm trying to prioritize new and fresh questions so folks don't just hear me answer the same things over and over. But feel free to drop them in and I'll do what I can to address them if it's fresh. But I'm trying to cater to as many folks as possible and answering more broadly to the extent that I can. If you have a more personal situation or I'm just not getting to your question live after live, I do apologize for that. If you want to discuss it more personally, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me and we can meet and discuss it together outside of the live as well. The link for that's in my bio, by the way. I see Rose is asking, grades are not weighted as much when trying to get in if you've been out of school for a while. The bigger focus is job experience? Question. So yes, that's fair. So the longer you've been out of undergrad, the less your undergraduate GPA matters and the more your work experience and your LSAT score will matter because they're more recent metrics. I mean, let's say you graduated from undergrad 10, 15, 20 years ago. The undergrad GPA from back then, of course, is not who you are today. You've grown, you've changed, you've matured, hopefully. And so law schools will understand that and they'll place less emphasis on your undergrad GPA and more on your LSAT score because it's a more recent metric they can use. They'll also look at your work experience as well, and that will take up a larger chunk of the pie. Yeah, that's true. It's me, Alvin. He's asking, I got a 152 on my diagnostic. Is that okay? I'm starting to study for the September LSAT. Yeah, so I actually started off at a 152 myself, and I ended up at a 175. So you can start with a perfectly average LSAT score and improve significantly, even into the 170, 175 range. It's ultimately a function of the amount that you study and the way in which you study. So look at what your study plan is going to look like. How much time can you carve out per day and per week? What kind of resources and support are you going to get for your LSAT prep to ease the way and help you study more efficiently, but you can improve significantly to a top score, provided that you put in the work and study the right way. And if you want to talk through the tutoring, happy to discuss it. You can book the free lesson with me and we can talk through it together. The link's in my bio. Happy to meet and discuss it further. We personalize every program to the student. It's not a one size fits all. We look at where you're currently at, what your goal score is, what your time frame is. Then we craft an action plan to get you from here to there over that time frame. No thank yous asking is, if I'm interning full-time for my gap year, is that still a good work experience for law school applications? Yeah, definitely. I mean, list it, include it. Don't over-index on it though. Like people don't get in because of their internships. I'm sorry to say. It's not like undergrad admissions where internships and work experience or extracurriculars play a big role. They're nice to have, of course. They're good soft factors to give some color on your application, but it primarily is your LSAT and your GPA. So don't do internships at the expense of your LSAT score. I'll have folks who decide to take off the summer and just focus on the LSAT prep full time. And I can't say that's a bad move. See, Sargsyan's asking about, do you need a bachelor's for law? Yeah, so in the US, law is a graduate level degree, meaning you've got to have a bachelor's prior to law school. In most of the world, strangely enough, law school is an undergrad level degree, but the US is what it is. So you're typically doing 3-4 years of undergrad, getting your bachelor's, and then moving on to law school. Just scanning through for more, anything I may have missed here. Chelsea's asking, do you think working full-time to pay for school and no extracurriculars will hurt? Not at all. I mean, if you had to work to pay for undergrad and as a result you didn't have time for extracurriculars, law schools will understand that. Just write a short addendum explaining that. Olive is asking, what if your internship is some unicorn level extracurricular? I mean, if it's unicorn level, meaning like it's something extraordinary, unique, impressive, then yeah, it could certainly help. So we will have folks, for example, who got a Rhodes Scholarship or a Fulbright. You definitely want to include that. Same deal goes for really impressive internships. Like that's, if it's really stand out, of course it can help, especially for the top schools. I see Sargsyan's asking if I teach the LNAT rather than the LSAT. No, I mean, I don't know anything about the LNAT. I focus exclusively on the LSAT, the law school admission test. I don't do anything else. And so I would recommend, if you're looking to take a different exam, I would seek out someone who specializes in that. Sorry, I can't help you with that, but all we do is the LSAT. We focus on folks getting into law school in the US. By the way, folks, for those of you just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives because the algorithm doesn't really boost them. So I do appreciate your support, spreading the word, sharing it to your socials, sharing it on Discords, subreddits, Facebook groups, sharing it to folks in your pre-law societies. And the more this grows, the more I will expand it over time. So I do appreciate whatever you can do to share, spread the word, and I'll keep answering your questions. Denzel's asking, are there any success stories of people juggling law school with a full-time job? I mean, if you're going to law school part-time, then you could still work full-time. That's totally fine, but you can't work full-time while you're in law school full-time. It's too much to take on. But part-time law school is definitely a thing, and you can definitely pursue that. There are lots of law schools that offer part-time programs. If law schools see that you're recently unemployed, will that hurt your chances? Not necessarily. I mean, it's not like they're not employers and they're not looking to hire you. They can see the strength of your application based on your LSAT score and your GPA. And things you've done in the past, of course, are still to your credit. Job market's tough these days, and so I think they'll understand. If you want to write an addendum about it, you certainly can. Not sure that you have to. It could be a blessing in disguise if you're able to use that time to study for the LSAT and you're not in a too tough of a financial spot, I hope. But there are a lot of folks who will study for the LSAT during those gaps in employment. Regarding deadlines for the LSAT, yeah, so all the deadlines for the LSAT are published on the Law School Admission Council website. The deadline's typically about a month and change prior to that LSAT test date, roughly 6 weeks or so prior, I think. And so look at the LSAC website, and they'll tell you they are very strict about those deadlines, though, so just keep that in mind. Also, there is a new rule from LSAC where the earlier you register for a particular LSAT test date, the earlier you get to schedule your LSAT, and it's first come, first served. And so there is this incentive for you to pay that registration fee sooner, register for the LSAT sooner to lock in your scheduling window. And with the LSAT going back to in-person testing starting in August, it's more important than ever for you to schedule your test earlier to get better test centers that are more convenient, in addition to get better testing times that fit your schedule. You don't want to be traveling really far the day of the LSAT to somewhere remote and taking it at a time that's not good for you. And so if there's no slots available near you, then you're just going to have to travel farther, and that's not a great situation to be in. So I would register earlier than later and schedule so that you can schedule sooner. Thanks for joining, folks. I'll be back on Monday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best. Take care.